Y'all seem wild tonight. All right. Okay. Anybody here, we would be able to say, anybody, we would say that God's able to do anything. He's able to perform any miracle. He created everything. We'll say he's able to. But the question is do you believe he will? That's a that's the challenge that we have. In John 6, verse 2, it says, then a great multitude followed him because they saw his signs or miracles which he performed on those who were diseased. And then it goes through and it talks about the loaves and the fish and the multiplication. And in verse 14 it says, then those men, when they had seen the sign or the miracle that Jesus did, said, this is truly the prophet who has come into the world. So you can notice that both situations that are close together right there, the healing of diseases and the multiplication, the supernatural provision, they come under the category of miracle. Both. They're signs. And what it is that there's absolutely no doubt God's behind it. It's the book of Acts talks in Acts chapter 1. It talks about proofs, infallible proofs that God did it. Talking about like what is the purpose of it? The purpose of it is to say, well, God's behind it, and it's to show others the goodness of God. That it displays the goodness of God. I got reminded of a story today, and some of you have heard me tell it before, but one of my first patients that I ever worked with he was a retired school teacher from Jackson Public Schools, and he was an English teacher, and I'm just painting a picture for you so that you can see what I'm seeing, because it blows your theology out of the water. But he's an atheist. Supposedly, I don't really believe that, but he was supposedly atheist, and he was homosexual, and he heard me talking to somebody, and I guess that one of my coworkers was picking at me about they were picking at me about something about a charismatic church, some praying in tongues or something. They were just poking fun, and so when I go to stretch his shoulder that day, he's looking around like he's fixing to tell me some big secret, and he's like, I got to ask you something. And what he told me was, he said when he was in his 20s, he was a retired teacher, so he was like in his 60s at this point, but he said when he was in his 20s, he had a motorcycle wreck. And they took him to St. Dominic's Hospital. He goes in, and he had broke his collarbone, is what it sounds like, the way he's describing it. But he said he was in severe pain, and he couldn't, he just couldn't think straight. He was in so much pain, and nobody was helping him, and he was just laying in the bed just moaning. And he said this little Catholic nun came up and said, may I pray with you? And he said, I don't even believe in God, but when you're hurting that bad, you'll do anything. And so he was like, sure. Well, she came in and she prayed for him, and the look on his face when he's trying to tell me the story, he said, I felt warm water go all the way down my arm, and I never hurt again. Do you believe me? And I said, yeah, I believe you. And he goes, what happened? I said, what do you think happened? God healed you. Now you try to get your theology around a little old Catholic nun that's so full of the Spirit that she goes in there and prays for him, and she did not touch him. He was very clear with that she did not touch him, because he's like, it wasn't voodoo, okay? She just prayed this. And then this guy who's not even believing in God, supposedly, but I told him, I said, and he said he had never told anybody that story because he just didn't know what to, he thought it was crazy. And then he had convinced himself that maybe his collarbone wasn't broken about sticking out his skin, that it was he just kind of made it up in his head or whatever, and his mind played a trick on him, and so he got well. Anyway, but he said, you've been knowing all this time, but what it did was it opened, this was 40-something years earlier, and it opened a door for me to be able to talk to him about God. But it opened a door. So what's the purpose of the sign? What's the purpose of the miracle? It's opening doors so that people see it. And they go, only God can do this. Okay? All right. So signs are important. They're important. Miracles are important. One of the characteristics of having great Bible faith is being able to recognize God's ability to come through when the situation is impossible. You have to be able to recognize God's ability to come through for his children when things are impossible. That's the kind of faith that Abraham had. In Genesis 22:8, it said he told Isaac, my son, God will provide. He took his son, God had told him to go sacrifice his son up on the mountain, and he takes his son, they go up the mountain. He tells the others that we'll be back in a little while. So he and his son are coming back down, but God has told him he's going to sacrifice his son. He goes up the mountain, and he was ready to sacrifice his son because that's what God told him to do. So, everything is in place. He's prepared everything. Isaac's in place to be sacrificed. He was going to light him up. Do not mistake that. He was not playing a game. God told him to do it, and he was going to do it. But Father Abraham, the father of our faith, he was so full of faith and so convinced that God was going to come through that he was willing to burn that boy. And he was just going to believe that he put those ashes back together, and he was going to walk back down that mountain with him. And he couldn't have known how. He couldn't have known how. He couldn't even in his wildest dreams have come up with how this is going to work. But he knew this, that God told him to go do it, and he was going to do it. And he knew that God would come through. In Psalm 89:34, it says, my covenant I will not break nor alter the word that has gone out of my lips. God keeps his promises. Thinking about, in the church I grew up in, nobody gave testimonies, like we do. There was just, your testimony was how you came to Christ, and it's important. That's a testimony. But your testimony was how you came to Christ, but there was nothing beyond that because, once you're in, I don't know. Once you're in, the only thing you can do is get scolded for embarrassing the church you're in because you did something stupid. I don't know. But anyway, that was your testimony. But then, as I started going to church with all y'all, and way back when, y'all weren't there, but I went to churches that were the testimony, it really, you didn't know what was wrong with it. There's something wrong with it because a testimony was like somebody telling you how bad the devil has been wrecking their life. And it was like, well, you do the dog died and everything, but God is able. It's like, well, able to do what? Because it's like I don't get it. It's like, well, where's the good part of this thing, man? But a testimony is about God's goodness. Now look, you can go through all that stuff. Look, we all live in life here. But the thing is I need a story that comes out on the other end. I need you to carry it on through. So the testimony should always be that we know God is able and that he will. But not only is he able, but he will. We can't just talk about his ability to do anything. There's just as much in the Bible about God's willingness to do something as it is his ability. God is no respecter of persons. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. All of those things. So, and just looking back over your course of your Christian life, when did he not come through? You may not feel like he came through in the moment, but on down the road, you see where he protected you from something. You prayed for something, you didn't get it. And then you find out, wow, that was going to blow up. Right? But stand in faith, knowing that he will do something. Okay? Knowing that he will. Not just that he's able to, not just that if I live good enough, he's going to. No, but if he's giving you a word on something, he will. If he's giving you a promise on something, and I was telling the Sunday school class this the other day, if you know, words spoken over you, you ought to be going over them and over them and over them, because because if God has made a promise to you, he's going to come through. He's going to bring it to pass. The more impossible it looks, the more likely it is to happen. It's an upside-down kingdom. Everything works backwards almost. Everything. Whenever it looks impossible, that's when you see the goodness of God. But it's like it's not like he's trying to dangle a carrot in front of you just to see if you keep chasing it. It's not that. But y'all, in the end, your testimony has got to be about something that was impossible that God came through with. So a man came to Jesus one time and said, if you will, I know you can heal me. Well, and Jesus let him off the hook, and I will. So anytime a seed of Abraham said, God will provide. And we are the seed of Abraham. And anytime the seed of Abraham, a covenant man, covenant woman, dares to believe that he is Jehovah Jireh, the God of the impossible, he can do anything. If they believe that he's Jehovah Jireh, he is God who provides, then he will back it up and will provide. So, we all wish that he'd do it quicker. Everybody. But, there's a whole lot of suddenlies in the Bible. Those are good. Those are good to read. That's a good word, suddenly. Suddenly. Hebrews 11:19 says, concluding that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from which he also received him in a figurative sense. So, and talking about Abraham, and when it says that it's concluding there, it means convinced. And that's where a lot of us miss it. We know the information. We know the stories. Okay? We know the testimonies coming out of the Bible. We know the testimonies from people around us. But the thing is, and listen, it's so easy for me to be totally convinced. I'm talking about man, I'd bet my life on it that God's going to come through for you. I mean, you want to feel good. Listen, tell me about an impossible situation. I can tell you God's going to come through for you. The problem is when I get my cage rattled. And then calming that dude in the mirror down. I mean, that's the God of the impossible right there. That's a miracle in and of it. That's a miracle in and of itself. But we have to be convinced. Abraham was convinced. He wasn't always convinced. He wasn't always. I mean, that's one thing I told you. If you could go back in time and live in biblical times and you want to be in the Bible, be careful, because it's going to tell every mistake you made. It's very honest. And it's to help us so that we don't feel like such fools when we do something bad, we do something stupid, okay? So here we have Abraham at 75 years old. He's got the promise of God on his life that he's going to have a child, and going to be his descendants are going to be like the sand on the beach, as many as the stars in the sky. All of these things. And he and Sarah get impatient. And they try to help God out. And now we have Ishmael. So he has a baby outside of his marriage with his wife's blessing, Ishmael. Now, when you get impatient and you try to help God, you end up birthing an Ishmael. And you don't want an Ishmael running around in your life. You don't want an Ishmael house. You don't want an Ishmael car. You don't want an Ishmael husband. You don't want an Ishmael wife. You don't want an Ishmael. They're hard to get rid of. But God was silent after that. God was silent for 13 years. Al talked about 13 the other night. Wasn't it 13? But God was silent for 13 years. And when he did talk to Abraham, he didn't say anything awfully mean, but it was stern. And he said, I am the Almighty God, walk before me and be thou perfect. It was not a casual, friendly conversation. It was a rebuke. In other words, God was saying, Abraham, I don't need your help. Now, Paul picks up on all this in Galatians chapter 3, and he said that Ishmael was of the flesh. So, how many things in our Christian life have we produced out of the flesh? God's saying, I don't need your help, all I need is your faith. In the Hebrew, that is El Shaddai, the God in whom nothing is impossible. In Romans chapter 4, Paul talks about Abraham and Abraham's faith, and he staggered not at the promise of God. But again, that's not a description of Abraham at 75. That's a description of Abraham at 99. That's whenever his faith. And what had happened to him was that he had an encounter with God that he was convinced from then on. He was convinced that whatever God said, God would do. He was convinced. How do you convince somebody of something like? How do you get a reputation for being somebody that's trustworthy, somebody that can be trusted? Well, if you go into business with somebody and you got like a business partnership going with somebody, and you know that year in and year out that this person makes good decisions and makes decisions that are best for everybody involved, and that they're wise, that they're doing their best, right, and that they're making trustworthy decisions. It doesn't matter if another person comes up and talks bad about your partner. It doesn't matter to you because you know that they're trustworthy. It doesn't matter what doubt somebody tries to put in your head about that person. You know that they're trustworthy. So, in our experiences with God, is he faithful? Is he trustworthy? Because a lot of times we act like he's not. You know how I know? Because I get upset sometimes, and I get all crazy in my head over the least little thing, and it's because what am I doing? I'm just telling him I'm not trusting him. At that point, that is a very good indicator that is an area of my life that I do not trust him in. Now, thank God he don't just strike me with lightning. He's graceful, and he just eases me along, you know. But it's a really good gauge to where are you in this area of your life? Well, what area of your life do you get the most stressed in? Because, you know, ask him to come into that area. Now he's gonna sweep and clean the house now. I mean, like it's gonna look different when he gets through with it. But all of a sudden you're not worried anymore. Right? But he is faithful and he is trustworthy. He's got that reputation, and he had that reputation with Abraham, and he believed him so much that he was going to burn his son on that altar. It says, he staggered not at the promise of God. He was fully persuaded. That's just another way of saying that he is convinced. Now, whenever things start getting crazy in an area of your life, right? I mean, whatever it is, it don't matter. But when things start getting crazy, just know this, that like whenever it goes nuts, that you got the devil by the throat. Because the closer you get to your miracle, the more upset he gets. And he starts throwing all of the stuff that you're scared of, he starts throwing at you. Everything that you're worried about, he starts chunking at you because he's trying to get you off track. He's trying to get you convinced that God's not trustworthy. He's trying to get you convinced that it's all going bad, to back off. Because what's he doing is he's trying to push you away from God. He knows, that's one thing that the devil knows how powerful you are. And so he will do anything he can to keep you from realizing it. But whenever you're so close, you're right at the victory, it's an impossible circumstance, El Shaddai is sufficient. El Shaddai will come through. In Job, and whenever we read Job and you read Job, man, I mean, there's so many awful things happen to Job. And as God and the devil had this bet, I mean, it's just this insane story. But it would have been nice if they'd have let Job in on it. Now look, God and the devil have this bet going, so hold firm, dude. Just, put your seatbelt on. It's going to get crazy. Well, I mean, he lost everything. He lost everything. In Job 5, he says, Job understood that God had made him wealthy and had blessed him, okay? He said, but as for me, I would seek God, and to God I would commit my cause, who does great things and unsearchable, marvelous things without number. So, he believes that. He knows that God made him wealthy, but then all of a sudden all these attacks start coming, and he starts to fear. So now he's got fear in his life. He's uncertain about the future. He doesn't know how it's going to turn out. Now, even his wife is telling him bad things. His friends are telling him bad things. And none of it's like, hey, you need to love God more. I mean, like she said, curse God and die. I mean, he's getting some bad counsel. But it's like he's getting attacked on every end. He lost everything. And we look at it and we think that this happened over the course. I mean, I did. I thought it happened over the course of a long time. But theologians believe that this happened anywhere between 9 and 12 months. It's a bad year. That was a bad year for Job. So whenever you start thinking you have a bad year, go to that. But the New Living Translation says that verse, it says he performs countless miracles. The Message translation says he is famous for great and unexpected acts. There is no end to his surprises. He's great in unexpected acts. So we need to start expecting the unexpected. There's no end to his surprises. There's no end to what he can do. Isaiah 55 verse 8 says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." The way the Message translation says that, listen to this, I like it. I don't think the way you think. The way you work isn't the way I work. For as the sky soars high above earth, so the way I work surpasses the way you work, and the way I think is beyond the way you think. The New Living Translation says, "And my ways are beyond anything you could imagine." In other words, God is saying he has ways of supplying you and making provision for you and for meeting you in all of those areas, whatever area of your life that you're needing him in, that he is able to do all that. And he's able to do it in ways that you couldn't even imagine. You can't even conjure it up in your head. But here's another problem that we have is that we might believe, if we believe that he's going to do it, okay, if we're believing and we're doing all we can, is that we start trying to figure out how he's going to do it. And we start moving the pieces of the puzzle in our own mind, and now all of a sudden we've tried to put him in a box. And if he don't do it this way, then it must not be him. If he don't do it the way I'm saying, and the way I'm thinking, then it must not be him. And you limit God with small thinking, with a little bitty, like you're not letting him have it. You're not letting him have it because he's going to do it in a way that you're not going to think of. He's going to do it in a way that just seems, you're not going to think of it, but it's an impossible situation, and he's taking it and going to make it and going to flip it in an instant. So we can't limit God with our small thinking, and you can't put God in a box. He's not going to stay in it if you try to. Now, so you can't be moved by what you see. You can't be moved by what you hear. You can't be moved by how long it's taken. He is famous for surprises and unexpected acts. He is able and he is willing. You stand in faith and you believe God is about to surprise you. Now, the last verse we go to, Proverbs 11, verse 25 says, "The generous will prosper. Those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed." The Amplified says, "The liberal person shall be enriched, and he who waters shall himself be watered." So here's what it's saying. It's saying, surprise others, and you're going to be surprised. Y'all, one of the issues that we can get into, and we don't mean to, but we just kind of get into, is like, bless my four and no more. It's the whole thing, like I'm in this for me. It's easy to get into that. And listen, is God going to bless you? Of course he is. But you understand that he's not blessing you just for you. It's hard to think about. it's hard to think about. But you know I didn't know anything about the Florida thing till Dan told me about it just then. I don't know anything about the situation. It was an 18-year-old. I take it was a boy. Do you know that guy is God's kid? Now he may not choose. Now, I'm not saying that he's saved. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that every living being is his. Now, I'm not getting into theology about like does he go to heaven? I'm not doing that because I don't know him. I didn't know anything about the situation, but I do know this: God loves everybody the same. Now, if I'm the parent of one of those kids, I'm not going to see him as God's kid right now. I think that's normal. But I'm just telling you that everybody, I'll give you that situation. I really don't know why. Somebody must have needed to hear it. But I'm just saying, like, he loves everybody. It says that he's not willing that any man should perish. His heart is for you. You understand? You switch that over. Now, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, if we see how God has blessed us, and we take that blessing and we bless somebody else, and then they take it and they bless somebody else, and then all of a sudden God blesses us. The way it works is God blesses you with more. And so now I got to give that away too. And then he blesses you with even more. And now I got to give that away too. And the next thing you know, everybody is sharing the goodness of God with everybody. And an 18-year-old kid don't sit there and fantasize about shooting his classmates. I mean, y'all, the church, we have to do our job at some point. And what I'm saying is, you have to be a blessing. And listen, being a blessing to somebody doesn't mean that you got to go run out and if God has called you to help the homeless, drug addicts, whatever, if that's your calling, go do it. But you know what he called you to do? Love on the people in your house. Surprise them with things. And then carry it out. And next thing you know, don't be surprised now. Whenever I've been studying this stuff and everything, and I get a phone call, and I'm not saying this to be braggadocious, I'm just telling you this. But I got a phone call from an old patient of mine's son. I haven't seen this lady in a long time, but her son called me. No, I take that back. He has called me before, but I saw he needed some money, basically, okay? He needed some money. He was out of gas. All right? And the thing is like, what are you going to do? Well, the easy answer is, I don't have any cash on me. That's the truth. I don't carry cash because I give it to people. Because I give it to people, and that's just the truth. I don't like carrying, I need to carry more cash. I'm just saying, but when I have cash and I see somebody, I end up handing them money, and I don't know. It just seems like all of a sudden, for somebody else, it just seems like a piece of paper, And anyway, but I gave him the money, and he's like, I'll pay you back. And I said, no. I said, don't take that from me. Don't take the blessing from me. I need you to have this. But what I'm saying is be a blessing to somebody. I guarantee you, I may not be able to recognize it, but I guarantee you at some point this week, next week, or whatever, I'm going to get some surprise money somehow, and I may not even realize it. Most of the time, I don't do any of the money in our house. Crystal does all of it. And so the thing is, like, no matter what she says about what we have, I'm going to be really surprised because I don't know. I know she tithes because David keeps asking me to preach. And I know if I wasn't tithing, he wouldn't be asking me to preach. But if you want to be godlike, then surprise other people, okay? But what I'm saying is, like, be somebody else's answer to the impossible. Be a part of the solution. And then see all of the problems in your life start getting solved. But it's just that, and I was thinking, I don't know how to express it. You don't work for things. You don't have to work for things. I mean, y'all know how big I am on grace and all this. I mean, Jesus has already died. He's already provided for everything. Everything he can do, he's done, and he sat down at the right hand of God. He's done it. It's our job to start speaking things. It's our job to start doing. But I'm saying, like, somehow, you don't work for your miracle, okay? But I guarantee you will not receive anything in the kingdom until you do it with a servant's posture. And I can't make sense of that. I right now, that would be a whole other lesson. But I'm saying, like, you can be in rest and doing something. In fact, I mean, most of us, we find out that we're more rested when we're doing something. Whatever impossible situation you have, just know that God is the God of the impossible. He can do it. He can handle it. Whatever it is, if I ask you, and just go ahead and do it. Just close your eyes, and I want you to think about what did you worry about today? And if you didn't worry about nothing, come talk to me afterwards, because then we're going to start talking to you about telling the truth. What did you worry about today? What came against you today that challenged you? Because no matter what it is, whatever you throw at me, whatever you put on the table, whatever you do, God can fix that. So what I'd ask you to do is to picture whatever that worry is and whatever that fear is, and set it down in the chair next to you and preach to it about how your God is able. It can't have you anymore. It can't rule you anymore. It can't consume your thoughts and waste your day worrying about things that shouldn't be any part of us. Lord, I just thank you for your goodness. I thank you for your faithfulness. I thank you just for who you are, Lord. Lord, I praise you today, Lord, for being our provider, for being so good in every area, Lord. Lord, I just thank you that people here start seeing solutions to their problems, Lord. I just thank you that I just say that they are good soil, that they are good soil for seed to fall and for them to produce fruit. I just thank you that fruit is going to be produced, and it's going to be shared, and it's going to produce more fruit, and it's going to be shared. And I just thank you that just in our sphere of influence here, Lord, that it just looks like an orchard. That it's just fruit. It's just fruit, and it keeps fertilizing the ground, and then more seed pops up, and then it's just that the soil is rich, and that it's ready and it's ripe, Lord. I just thank you for the harvest that we have, Lord. Lord, show us where we would be your light, Lord. Show us where we would be your hands and feet, Lord. Show us where we could be a surprise to somebody else, Lord. Lord, before we go to bed tonight, show us where we can bless somebody. Show us something we can do, something we can say to encourage somebody. Lord, I thank you for your goodness. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Stand, and that was just a fantastic word, Bill. I felt like it was just washing over me and feeding my spirit and giving and stirring up my faith. I just want to share this one little testimony. Bill talked about testimonies. There's been times since the foundation of this church that we were in impossible situations. I know you don't believe that, to where we didn't know how we were going to make ends meet as a church. One time, we were actually standing out in front of Ruthie's desk over in the South Building. We were talking about the offering and what we were going to do and stuff. And Dan, you may remember this. A lady came up to the door, and she said, she was all smiles, and she came in. I said, "What are you doing today?" She said, "I'm just out paying my bills." I said, "Oh, you are?" And I thought she was paying her rent and maybe her credit cards and stuff. She said, "Yes." She said, "I paid off my car, and I paid off my house, and I'm paying off my bills." I said, "Oh, really?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, what are you doing here?" She said, "Well, I just came to drop by my tithe." She handed Dan the check, and he goes, "Whew." And I said, "Well, what do you got there?" And I looked at it. She had settled a court case, and she handed us a check for $65,000. Wasn't it 65? $65,000. That's a testimony. We carried all the way through, Bill. Carried all the way through. That's happened several times. I'll never forget, Dwight's one of our elders. I meet with the elders. They're experienced businessmen who have trusted God. And Jim and Ed. So I went to him one time. I said, we're going off a cliff at the end of August. No more finances to meet the needs. Boom. And all I did was work for a guy all my life, and I worked for a big company, and they gave me a paycheck, and so I didn't have to write those checks. I just got my check because I worked. These guys have had to write the checks, had to trust God. So I said, we're going off a cliff. I'll never forget, Dwight said, I said, what do we do? And Dwight said, let's see if we catch wind. I said, what? He said, let's see if we catch the wind. Something happened. We caught the wind, and there we went. And it's called faith. Carry the testimony all the way through. Father, in Jesus' name, bless your people. If you need prayer tonight, you come down. I'm going to release you. And they'll bill it to be down here, and Dan. And Dwight, you come down and you pray for somebody too. Somebody may need their finances to catch the wind. You pray for them. Amen. God bless you.